Hi, folks. Thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate you listening in. We have Lisa Pizzuto from Fluid Mechanics Management Team. My name's John Waldman, and we have Leslie Lucas from College Swimming Consulting. Thank you guys so much for joining us. So we're going to start today, and we're talking about a little bit about the grade point averages and what you need to do with your grade point average so you can see and plan for the future, get this moving right away. You want to normally take in consideration starting in 8th grade, right? You want to kind of practice what you're going to do in your later years when you start getting into high school and what you're going to perform there. So Lisa, tell me a little bit about how grade point averages affect colleges and getting into college, and if swimmers can go depending on like what their grades are. So if they got some bad grades in the beginning, can they make it up, things like this? How does that go?
Well, you want to try to do the best you can right from the beginning, and that's really important to understand, especially for the younger kids that are 14, 15 years old going into freshman and sophomore years. Those are really important years because those are the years that the coaches, when they first start looking at you and starting to recruit you, that's what they're looking at. And so it's going to be important for you to do well in those first 2 years. Remember, colleges have minimum academic requirements. Now, many people make the minimum academic requirements, especially considering the schools that they're applying to. The coach can elevate like the best swimmers, the swimmers that they're selecting for recruitment, their best recruits out of that pile. But at the end of the day, you have to make the minimum requirements. So if you're not doing that, especially right off the bat in your freshman and sophomore years, then, that's going to be a struggle for you to get into that university, even if you are the swimmer that the coach wants. And so it's important to recognize that right off the bat and make sure you're making moves in that direction to do the best that you can academically.
And Lisa, you were a coach in college for how many years?
23 years.
23 years. So you got a real clear view of what it takes coming in, things like this. And so hitting it right in the beginning, and we're going to take a look at a chart in just a moment to really help them understand how that impacts. That's a really big deal. And from right to be able to really get your first step forward. And we're going to talk a little bit about when somebody enjoys their teacher or doesn't, and whether it matters or not, because you really, right, whether you think a teacher likes you or don't, doesn't make any difference. You've got to get those grades no matter what, if I'm right.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I'll tell you, it's heartbreaking as a coach for a swimmer to give you their transcript and they're all excited. They really want to come to your school, and you look at the transcript and you're thinking, there's no way you're going to get in, based on your academics, your transcript. And so, you really have to know as a freshman, sophomore, like what kind of schools you're interested in, obviously, and then what you need to get done. But leave yourself as many options as possible and do as well as you can in every class. Like the professor, don't like the professor, who cares, right? Make sure you're getting the grades, because it's more than that, 6-month period that you're with that teacher in high school. It's going to affect what you do later on. So, do the best you can right off the bat. That's super important. Gotcha.
I want to go over to Leslie now. Now, Leslie runs College Swimming Consulting. And Leslie, you work with fluid mechanics swimmers and help them, right? And you work with swimmers everywhere, and you help them get into college. That's one of the things, the services that we offer, right? To help them find the schools that would match what they want to, where they want to go. Is that right?
Yeah. And on a GPA topic, the key thing that I like to tell people is swimmers think, oh, if I get a bad grade, it's fine. I've got 4 years to make it up. It's just my GPA in the end that matters. And that is not true. Because of the recruiting calendar, coaches can start talking to recruits after their sophomore year. So June, after their sophomore year, you're going to be sending them transcripts. So if you got a bad grade or 2 or 3 your freshman and sophomore year, it's really going to water down your GPA and make you less attractive to those coaches when you start talking to them June after your sophomore year.
So if somebody comes into you and says, hey, I've got these grades, right? If I'm right, you're going to be looking for a different set of schools dependent on their grades. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
So it actually changes the avenues you can go into.
Right.
So it makes a major impact.
Yes, sorry. The key thing for me is making sure that I've got a good set of schools that fit them both athletically and academically. So if they've had a bad few grades their freshman, sophomore year, then I'm going to give them a different set of schools than if they were to kind of nail it their first couple of years of high school.
Got it. And in that case, it's not even you just selecting the schools, because they kind of selected it by getting those grades, right? And does it make any difference whether, in your opinion, whether they like their teacher, don't like their teacher? Does it make any difference, or is it just flat out the grades?
Oh, it's definitely the grades. I mean, that's what the coach just wants: numbers. They want test scores, they want transcripts. And so unfortunately, if you don't have a good connection with a teacher, you kind of have to fight through it and find ways to make sure that you still get the good grades. Maybe go to tutorials and with a different teacher. But yeah, the grades make the difference.
So what swimming does, if I'm right, for both of you, or either you want to answer this question, what swimming does from a standpoint of getting them into college, is that like it could be like a leverage thing? So if you've got the grades and you got better swimming, then it can jump you up into colleges, right? Depending on your grades, things like that. Is that right?
Sure. You always have to make the minimum for whatever university that you're going to. You have to make the minimum baseline. And then, college, most schools will have, 3 to 5, spots that they can elevate a swimmer out of that, or, out of that pack of acceptable students, and then, bring them onto the team. But again, that's usually reserved for the top, couple of kids in the program for that recruiting class. So you don't want to hang your hat on that either. Again, you want to leave yourself as many options as possible by doing as well as you can right off the bat.
They only have so many chips, basically, that the college coaches can use. I've got it. Let's go over, and we're going to share our screen here and just talk about, so here's an example. And the reason why we're only using freshman and sophomore year, back to what Leslie said. Leslie, can you talk to that?
Yeah, so those first 2 years, you got to think about, like, when am I going to start talking to these coaches? And so you're going to start talking to the coaches after those 4 semesters. The first 2 semesters your freshman year, then your 2 semesters your sophomore year. So your GPA after 2 years, not 4 years. I mean, obviously you're going to want to do well all 4 years, but when you're first talking to coaches from the target schools that you want to go to, they're going to be looking at your first 2-year GPA.
And is there a major, let's say they were doing well in the first 4 semesters, then they have a major fall off. Can that impact them actually getting into those schools after that?
Depending on the school, it can. If you start off really well and have a couple of hiccups later on, that's better than having a couple of hiccups early on and finishing really well. Because like I said, that's the college recruiting is happening after those first 2 years. So that's when they're going to be filling their rosters up.
Okay, so let's go ahead, and we're going to give a 4.0 for all, right, on every class. Now, we know that you can get higher than that, depend on weighted grades, things like this. Everything's a 4.0. Let's see the first class, what happens. You maybe didn't like the teacher or something like this, or somehow it didn't work out and you got a 3. What happens to your grade point average? It's already down to 3.97 for all those, right? Again, remember, this isn't going across all 4 years. That's when they're looking at it after, right? It's June, is that right? After their sophomore year, they can start communicating.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and Lisa, you wrote our college pipeline, right? And so the kids are following that college pipeline, and Leslie's helping all of our kids go through that college pipeline and helping them find those schools. And so we're seeing this happen. And let's say you got a couple of those where maybe you weren't good in math or whatever it happened to be. Just 2 of those scores, you're down to 3.94. What does that do for the top tier schools, things like Stanford, Harvard, Yale? What do you see?
Well, the top tier schools are going to probably have a problem with that. Again, you have to make their minimum. The minimums are on their webpage on admissions. They're going to tell you exactly what they need. Again, those are minimums. Not everybody who makes the minimum will be getting in. Most of the people who apply make the minimum. And so then I always say it's the what else you got, and then swimming can elevate you out of that. But, there's many swimmers who are in programs. I mean, the last, I think 4 or 5 years I was at the college that I was at, the swim team had the highest GPA of all the athletic programs by a lot. So, you're in competition with the other swimmers as well in there. But, you want to make sure that you have your best foot forward right off the bat. It's going to be important to do that because as you go down, especially in some of those major programs, that's going to be problematic. And remember, for the coach to actually elevate you, you have to be one of their top recruits for that year. So let's say there's, 5 or 6 recruits for that freshman class. Well, they might have 3 spots that they're looking at. So you might not be one of those people. So give yourself the opportunity to get in on your own as well. Then you don't have to worry about getting a spot from the coach. Make sure they have a roster space for you, obviously moving forward. But, if you don't need the elevation in terms of being admitted, then you wouldn't need it. Great. That's one less thing you have to worry about. So do the best you can right off the bat. It's going to make a difference.
And so Leslie, just to reconfirm, so when you're looking for them, if they turn in different grades, just so we know, it's a different list of schools that they're going to get back. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, you can, it's going to depend on the major, and also test scores as well will factor into it. But yeah, I mean, if you've had a rough few classes your first 2 semesters or first 2 years, it's probably going to be a different list of academic rigor for schools than if you had nailed it all 4 semesters your first 2 years of school. The other thing I wanted to point out to Lisa's point is GPA really matters to these college coaches as well. They like to be able to say, my team had this GPA. So if they have a recruit that's really strong academically and maybe not even quite as fast, they might err on the side of the academic recruit because it's going to be good for their GPA once they're on the team.
Got it. And so what Leslie does for you, just so you know, folks, is she generates a list of colleges that meet your specifications and the information that she takes from you, and she harvests that for you. So it cuts way down on the work to get into college, to find the right schools. That's what she does. Lisa wrote our college pipeline and keeps that up to date. So these guys are fantastic. They're absolute experts.
If you would like more information about college swimming consulting, please click the link below to get in touch with Leslie Lucas, who will personalize your recruiting experience for you and help you find the school for you.